Okay, so today I want to talk about CANZUK, which is something that I've known for maybe a year or two. And I don't know, that now that I'm in Australia, I've been thinking more about it. Obviously, it's a union, if you don't know. Yeah, it's not obvious. It's a union between Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. So the UK with like some former British colonies that definitely do have similar like political stability, economic development, culture, vibes in general. I mean, they're definitely more similar to one another than they are to, for example, America, which is still English speaking but very different. And they're also more similar to each other than most of them are to Ireland, because Ireland has a little bit more of the European vibe, so much so that it's in the EU. So yeah, I think lots of people started talking about that after Brexit, because people would be like, oh, we can't go live in Europe anymore, especially British people would be thinking that. And they'd be like, but maybe we could go live in Australia or in New Zealand or in Canada. And I've heard a lot of shit about that online, on how it's like uh, Britain trying to be colonial again or something like that. I don't think it's true. I honestly don't think it's true. I think it would be a great idea. I mean, New Zealand and Australia have already done Kanzuk for the last 50 years or so. It's just not Kanzuk because it doesn't have Canada and the UK. But they're already integrated in terms of freedom of movement. And I'm going to flex on that. Like, to me, the most important thing is freedom of movement. That's the thing I love about like the EU, about any of those things. About Mercosur also, you can live anywhere in South America, being a citizen of any of the countries. I mean, not anywhere in South America, most countries in South America. It's just like, I love freedom of movement, and I think it's by far the most important part of any economic agreement and all that. I like people being free to uh, make their own life choices according to what they prefer. And then people say that everyone would move to Australia. I don't think it's true. Like, I know a lot of Australians who would love to move to New Zealand, who would love to move to the UK. Many of them do on temporary working visas, but then they have to come back, and then they do. But I'm sure some of them wouldn't. I'm sure, even though salaries in Australia are much better, some of them would choose to stay in the UK because it's rainy. Yeah, no, because it's closer to Europe, and it's a little bit more traditional, let's say, or just they just like it there more. And London is definitely like something else. You're not getting anything like London. Melbourne is close, but you're not getting anything like London in Australia. So I don't want to overarch. I'm not a citizen of any of those countries. I'm not a citizen of New Zealand or Australia or the UK or Canada. So I don't want to go around me saying, yeah, you shouldn't join or something. But I have lived in the UK. I have lived in Canada and have lived in Australia. I've never been to New Zealand. Maybe I'll go in January, but I haven't decided yet. But having lived in 3 out of those 4 countries, I can definitely say that they're similar. Like, they're so much more similar to one another than they are to like any other country in the world that I've been to, at least. Especially Canada and Australia. I'm gonna have to say the UK is a little bit of a different vibe. So I feel like if Europe was like here, then probably Ireland would be in between like Europe and the UK. So like, if Europe was here and the UK was here, Ireland would be like right in the middle. It takes a little bit of the UK, but it also takes a little bit of the EU. And then in between like Ireland and maybe New Zealand would be the UK. Like, the UK would be a little bit more like New Zealand, a little bit less like Europe. And then next online would be probably, I don't know, yeah, probably Australia, I guess. So it'd be like the UK, then New Zealand, then Australia, then Canada, and then Canada out of all those would definitely be the closest one to America on the other side. So Europe on one side, America on the other side, and all those countries would be kind of in between. So like, the mixing of them up would be something that makes sense to me. Like I said, I'm not a citizen. I couldn't even vote of it if it were up for votes. It's definitely like a thing up in the air, let's say. But I want to hear what mostly. I mean, you can talk about it wherever nationality you were from. Like I said, I'm not from any of those countries. I'm not talking about it. But I want to see what New Zealanders and Australians and Canadians and British people think of that, if they think it would be a good idea. And focus on freedom of movement. Don't go about like political union and empire and stuff like that. Like, that's not something that I think most people would want. But like, being able to move around, being able to labor around like in any country that you chose, something that I would like very much. As an EU citizen now, which I hadn't been very, very long, it's a very good vibe to not worry about visas, to not worry about like passport entries or anything. Being able to just travel with an ID card and work as if you're a citizen. I mean, and it works for the EU, even though the countries are like very, very different, and they're like even speaking different languages. I feel like for Kanzuk it would be even easier because it's the same language. So yeah, it's something I would like. Definitely not the US. I think the US would mess up with CANZUK in that sense, like it doesn't fit. But yeah, tell me about it. Tell me what you think about it.